Odds are, if you've been in tabletop gaming long enough, you have seen certain themes more represented than others. For when I started and still to this day, I would say both zombies and Cthulhu are overly represented in the world of tabletop gaming. And recently, I would say nature, animals, and the environment have joined them in this sort of oversaturated area. That being said, that doesn't mean these are games you should ignore. In fact, I get very excited when a game takes one of these themes but does something different to separate itself from the pack. Keystone North America is the new game from Rose Gauntlet, in which you will try to collect animal cards, placing them in a grid and building them around Keystone species. Species that are sort of the linchpin environments, and in this case will earn you many more points. But the question remains, will this game become a keystone species among board games, or will it be outcompeted by other games with the similar theme? In Keystone, each player is going to have a board like this that will fit up to 16 creatures that you will collect throughout the game. On your turn, you'll either have the ability to gain a creature from the lineup or one of the tile powers. Let's start with the creature cards, as that's where you're going to get most of your points. Your goal here is to pick up cards, adding them to your board, trying to make columns and rows of creatures in a numerical ascending or descending order that have the same environment symbol. At the end of the game, you're going to score each row and column. Some creatures only can exist in one environment, some can exist in two, or even more so, but you'll have to keep in mind that they all have to be in the same environment. So let's say instead of this Californian condor, we had the bald eagle. Even though these three connect through a desert and these two through a swamp, you will not be able to score the entire full roll. You would only probably score the highest. So they all need to be in the same environment, not just connecting in some chain of environments. In addition, the numbers do have to be sequential. So even if we have all these cards in the desert, this goes from 1, 2, 3, skipping 4, meaning this 5 will not add to it and not help you score points. So let's now get back to adding cards to your lineup. So there will always be 6 cards out. On your turn, you may pick the farthest card for free. But let's say you want this Californian condor because, like I've been showing in all the examples, it's the one that's going to help you score the most points. You're going to have to use these synergy tokens that you get a few in the beginning, and for each card you pass, you must place one there. You will add them to your board, and for each symbol it matches, you will get a synergy back actually. So for example, we placed the Mexican gray wolf there, it would earn 1 point that way, 1 point that way, and 1 point that way, giving you 3. So comboing with what's near each other as well will give you more of these synergy points. 3 of them will give you a victory point at the end. So it's a nice way to get some bonus points that way. And of course, being able to pick what cards you want. Now, let's say you didn't love anything on the board right now. That's when you can come to the tiles. The tiles will have an activated power that you can do. Most of them usually add research tokens onto a card, which usually grants them another point at the end of the game. But there are some other cool things. In particular, the one I want to point out is moving a card, which will allow you to take a card, move it somewhere else, in which you will score again for more of those synergy points. But after you do so, you'll flip it over to its other side. Now, let's say multiple of these have been flipped over. Instead of choosing one white tile, you may choose all the yellow tiles. The reason you may or may not want to do this is 1, the white tiles, after you pick them, have this red X. You choose a number of cards in the lineup to get rid of. But the yellow tiles are a little bit weaker. And also, once you do all the actions or the ones you wish to complete, you move this tracker down. The game ends should this tracker hit 0, or if a player fills up their board, in which case you'll finish up the round so everyone has the same amount of turns. The final thing I want to go over are these cards over here. These are environment cards, and they can be purchased for 10 synergy tokens, but they are a bonus. So you could pick up this card, place it here, then spend 10, if you had the 10 obviously, to then add 1 to your board. At the end of the game, it will score as a wild, and it changes for each time it's used. The other thing to point out are keystone species. It will rescore the row or column, meaning, for example, going here, this one would be worth 1, 2, 3 points, because 3 cards in the column. It would be worth, let's say, 2 more if there were some research tokens there. So a total of 5 points. But because there are 2 Keystone species there, we're scoring it 2 more times, giving you a total of 15. There are some other symbols too, including endangered as well as tags. These are mostly important for a secret goal card. You will start with one of these at the beginning of the game. Usually wants you to have certain symbols in a pattern, like 3 tags in an L shape. You can rotate them as you please. 3 suns like that, and then 3 endangered creatures anywhere on the board as long as they're there. They significantly increase in points for each one of these you complete, so it's usually very helpful to try to complete all 4 of those. The game will keep going until one of the 2 end conditions I mentioned before are complete. You'll tally up the scores, scoring each row and column, only counting environment if it has at least 2 creatures in there or environment cards, and see who did the best job organizing their board. Now, I will say this is one of those games, I don't have a category for it. The biggest one that comes to mind, obviously, is Splendor, actually, in which sometimes you can feel like the person in front of you is always taking what you need. And it can be a little bit frustrating. Going back to the board, this is one of those games where unless you know perfect information and you're very skilled, you could be like, oh, I'm going to start by placing this 4 over here, but then you put the 4 here because the desert's there and you're like, oh, I really need to move, but the move power, there are other tiles, might not be available to you, so you could have just ruined that entire row. Or even if the move tile is available, the person in front of you keeps activating it, and by the time it flips over, someone else takes it. So this really feels like a game when you're constantly just trying to get enough cards in there to at least get some points, rather than trying to combo out or do some impressive tactic that triggers a bunch of different cards. The cards themselves too aren't that interesting. They're just really a number and an environment. Like, there is the season symbol that is really just for the secret goals. And in fact, my playgroup actually really hated those because there are times when, let's say, there's snowy mountains and a snow symbol. And every game, someone screwed it up and thought like, oh, I need 3 mountains in a row when they actually need 3 snow symbols. Or they're like, oh, no, I'm good because they had 2 mountains and a snow symbol and they just didn't realize it. Even after they played the game more than once. And it was just one of those things that was really annoying because it didn't really feel like it added too much to it. And then, of course, the cards themselves, like, all of it's just for points. It doesn't like do anything interesting. They line up, you have to just get certain number cards. And then, of course, what's going to happen, you'll get something like this and you'll be like, I lined up these cards perfectly. This is the only card that fits. I need a 3 that fits both desert and swamp. And then someone's going to be like, yeah, I'm going to discard that for this ability. It's not even like they're trying to hate on you. Of course you can, and it's going to feel bad. And even if you got it, so let's say you got this here, it's like it gives you 2 more points. So it's one of those things that it feels really bad when you don't get it, but also you weren't like, oh my God, this is the super move that will help me like totally crush you. And that's, I think, a big problem with this game in terms of the multiplayer. You never feel like I am just doing this really cool move and outplaying other players. You're just almost hoping that the right cards are out for you at the right time and you didn't misplay something. And in the end, maybe if you got multiple Keystone species in a row, you might get like a really feel like, oh, I actually got a lot of points here. Otherwise, it's like, okay, I got 6 points. Cool. Next one. It didn't have that excitement of seeing who's going to win, how high did everyone go. And I think that kind of attitude pervades through the entire game. You're never super excited and feel like you've got a ton of points, even when during scoring. Like, maybe if you got multiple Keystone species numbered correctly in the same environment, will you get a nice row or column with giving you a lot of points. Otherwise, it was like, all right, I got 6 one now, and next one. It's sort of like arithmetic almost, and it didn't feel that good when comparing to other people. And then obviously if you lost out and you could never get that card, or someone took the card or destroyed it, and you just sort of feel bad. Even the moving, I really just wish like half the time was I could do well if I could move these around more. Like, I wish some of these were paid for with the synergy tokens rather than just triggered and waiting for them to reactivate. Now, I'm sounding pretty negative, but a lot of this sort of flips on its head when we go to the solo mode. The solo mode will have you in this journal playing out cards with unique rules. And that's where I feel like this game was designed initially, because the idea of putting numbers and grids lined up correctly, that description, you probably lead some of you to think Sudoku, which you think of more of a solitary, solve the puzzle by yourself. And that, when you play it like that, this game shines much better. First of all, you don't have someone else taking cards from you. Even if you can't find the right card, it feels more like you trying to deal with what was dealt to you rather than just being picked on or just constantly having the person in front of you or taking the abilities and cards you need. In addition, it adds a whole bunch of different rules. So it could be like you can only win if you hit this score threshold. You also need to make sure you have at least 5 desert cards and 2 endangered species. And you need to complete 2 of a secret goal and they give you a specific one. So it's really tailored rather than being like, when I feel there's so much randomness that it's hard to get invested in the multiplayer, in the puzzle modes that like outside of the cards that come out, it really feels like it's tailored to make sure that it's what you choose to buy and your maneuvers rather than just waiting to your turn and seeing what happens. And as you can see, there are plenty of puzzles to go through. And I should mention secret envelopes. These will add new cards to the game. I won't spoil what's in them, but they're fun nonetheless. They add some new cards and it feels cool to open up this pack. And they tell you if you do want to reset this to give this to someone else, how to do so. Unfortunately, that's where I think this game's going to reside. It's not a game I'm going to take out to play at a game night. The best reaction I got from someone is more like a, But the single player, obviously I played some games because, I'm reviewing it. But after a while came something where it's sort of like, yeah, you know what? I'll play another one. Like it became less about so I can talk about it and more because I was just enjoying the experience. It wasn't the mind-blowing, like, gonna be the next big game everyone talks about, but it's gonna be that time when you have your puzzle book, be it, Sudoku or crossword puzzle, and you're like, I'm feeling, I got a nice drink, I'm gonna play this puzzle, see the new rules, and try it out. I mean, you will feel good when you open one of these, I won't lie. I mean, if you played a legacy game, opening an envelope is always great, but this is a journey which I think best walked by yourself rather than with a group of friends. Crits and misses for Keystone, North America. Crits. I feel this was a puzzle game at heart and therefore in the solo mode is where it shines. With each puzzle with its own rule sets as well as objectives, and when we get down to the misses, almost all of them only refer to the multiplayer mode, since you're only playing by yourself, seems to be able to avoid most of those traps. At this point for a nature game, I feel you've got to have beautiful pieces of art, and this game is no exception. Each card is beautifully done with the creature or plant it's showcasing, and it'll probably be the only other thing you're focusing on besides if the number fits in a column. And of course, I'm always happy to be able to see the California condor pictured in all its majestic beauty. Misses. While the solo mode provides a great experience, the multiplayer provides a drab one. Throughout the game, you're just hoping that you're able to find a card that fits your board, and even then, it's not like it's triggering a huge combo, rather it just lets you score a few more points. You never feel amazed that you did this amazing combo, rather that you seem to just get by and do okay. The tile cards give powers, but there's one in particular I want to point out, and that's moving. This is a game where it's pretty rigid. You have a 4x4 grid to try to lay out these columns, and sometimes you misplanned or you weren't sure how something worked and you realized you need to move something. Sometimes that power might not be available to you, or because other people are in the same boat, the people are taking it before you ever get a chance to use it. I wish there was a way where that was just a constantly active, like you could pay some of your synergy points in order to get a move. That might make the feel bad moments feel a little bit better as you can adjust on the fly to what's happening rather than just sort of sit and pray and hope that the power that you need is available on your turn. The final thing I will admit was not a problem for myself, however happened to every other person I played with. There are many kinds of symbols, but the two major ones are for the environment and season symbol, and unfortunately because certain things are just intuitive like sunshine in a desert or snow in a mountain, that people tended to confuse the two often. This would cause them to realize they didn't score something, whether it be their secret goal or matching up a row, and that would cause more bad feelings and regrets that they didn't mean to actually score this way, but they didn't realize it until 4 turns later. I feel there are some great elements here as can be seen in the single player mode. I actually had a lot of fun there, but in terms of multiplayer, it just seems to be a very boring experience. It either is at best, you're like, okay, I lined up these things and I was able to get enough and fit it in the time. While this other side, if you don't get it, you're like, the two, when can I get a 3 that has the correct matching environment I need? That also has, oh, okay, you took that card, great, okay, that's fine. And there are things that they seem to try to mitigate, like the wilds for the environments or some of the powers. But for the most part, they never are available or strong enough to what you need. The environments can be a wild number, but usually you need something that fits 2 environments, not 1. The powers, honestly, I felt like the move one was heavily needed just to give people more leeway and breathing room to actually feel like they've done a good job. Now, this is only in the multiplayer. In the single player, even if you didn't have access to that power, because they tell you strictly which tiles you have to use for that, because you're the only one picking cards and choosing how to lay them out, I mean, barring some weird rules, you didn't feel like the game was just being mean to you. You felt like, okay, how can I plan this out? Like, it felt like a puzzle. And because of that, you lose a lot of the negative results, almost all the misses really, that I brought up, because it's all on you and you're the only one there. And so unless they add a bunch of like weird expansions, maybe cards that when you play them have powers similar to something like Wingspan, like there's power triggers every time you place a card next to it or the first time you play it, I don't see this as a game people are going to want to have hit the table. If you are more of a solo player, this is definitely one that you may want to take a look at, or maybe hope that a friend gets and then you can pass it around. It has that puzzly-like experience that you're going to be able to sit down when you have some free time and play it and try it out and have some fun with. But that is where I think this game is going to survive. And even then, I didn't think about this now, but how many other solo games are there out there that it's competing with? Its solo experience is fun. It's great, especially for anyone who is heavily into the crossword or Sudoku kind of that style of puzzling. But this won't be the Keystone species I said at the beginning that's going to sort of rock the boat, I believe. But I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. Was this a game that your playgroup enjoyed, or do you feel like me, this is more of a solo experience game? I'd love to hear from all of you, and let me know right down below. Thank you so much to everyone who made it to this point. Of course, if you think someone would be interested in this game, definitely share it with them before they make their purchase. And of course, do the usual stuff, the like, subscribe, the bell. That's the stuff that allows me to survive in this YouTube environment. But for now, I'm Will, and this has been Roll for Crit.